You know, being new to this, the whole time I was making that last video, I was like, nah, this ain't dumb. Why is it not laughing? Why is it not talking about this? This is dumb. It's pretentious. But then, I guess Clean saw my obscure Reddit post, and suddenly all this positive feedback started slapping me in the face.
Video. Honestly, you should totally watch that. It's a really funny video, but it's super informative. This guy only has 100 subs, so let's go get him some subs.
Thanks for the kind words, everyone. It's all so pretty. But also, fuck, what if this next video is bad? Now I'm gonna let everyone down. God shit, fuck. Oh, if you haven't seen that video, you should go do that real quick. It'd be nice. So, I was having a rough time deciding what to do next, but eventually I had this amazing idea. I just made an entire video about this mechanic that can be abused, and it makes the gameplay, how should I put it?
The meta being the way it is so fucking garbage and not fun.
What if on the next video I teach everyone how to abuse this mechanic so they too can make the game
Garbage and not fun.
genius, phenomenal, absolutely superb. Okay, so once again I'm gonna start on a bit of a tangent. The average player knows a few of the tricks, like jiggling around corners and not standing still too long, but there's a big difference between the tricks and understanding the principle behind them that can be applied to any situation. That's the difference between an okay player and a great player. And let's be real, most people who play this game are pretty garbage at it. What makes an FPS player good? Casual players tend to go straight to, I guess he can point and click heads with his mouse super fast. But aim's just one of the few mechanical aspects of the game, not to mention the more vital mental ones. A long conversation. For now, you just have to take my word for it when I say that your movement ability is just as important as your aiming ability, but neither are as crucial as your game sense, positioning, or other mental aspects. Any pro player will tell you FPS is a game of probability. It's simply impossible to predict everything in a fight, but a good player has enough understanding of the possibilities to play in a way that makes him the most likely to come out on top. So now to the subject of the video, movement. What do you use it for? Well, the most obvious way you can think about movement is your ability to make yourself hard to hit while having a good chance to use your aiming skill to hit your opponent. What does it have to do with probability? Sometimes you may make yourself as hard to hit as possible, but your opponent might land a lucky shot anyway. There's always a chance. What matters is if you're doing it right, most of the time you won't. Last point is that it's hard to treat movement as an isolated skill, since putting it to use effectively relies on a myriad of other skills. Now that you have a bit of context on today's subject, let's go on to practice. And also chill out a little bit. Let's start by demonstrating something you probably already know in one way or another. There's this neat training map in CSGO where you can make targets pop up for a set amount of time. They'll either be static, moving linearly, or moving randomly. Notice how me, a trained gamer, can hit a static target that stays up for about 0.5 seconds about 80% of the time. I can hit a linear, predictable target moving pretty fast that stays up for about 1 second about 80% of the time as well. A random target though? Give me 2 seconds and I can still only hit it around 50% of the time. See where this is going? We're trying to be this guy here while being as far as possible from this guy. Inertia makes real people move more like this guy, except slower, since the deceleration and acceleration periods make you change direction slowly enough to be pretty predictable. But lucky for us, Tarkov doesn't have that mechanic, so you can look like this, with minimal effort, while also being pretty accurate. So let's teach you to put those static abilities to good use. Oh yeah, also obvious but crucial point. Lateral movement is the key, because the closer to a 90-degree angle you're moving, the faster you'll move through your opponent's screen. If you're moving towards or away from him, you might as well be standing still. Yeah, vertical movement is still at 90 degrees, but we'll ignore it for now since the average player doesn't fly so good. Now I'm gonna go into a general explanation of how to use movement, then I'll demonstrate what it looks like in a firefight. Don't sleep through this part, it's important, I swear. Aiming is mostly based on a mix of muscle memory and prediction. Watch how I track my friend Mike, who is graciously volunteering as a target.
Bro, what the fuck are you doing?
I can follow his head closely or have a chance to throw my aim at it as long as I can predict where it's going. Hitting this shot is entirely on me. If someone has this kind of a chance to shoot at you, you're relying on him messing up the shot, which is not great. But as soon as it does something I'm not anticipating, I'm not gonna hit it, at least on purpose, until I can read its new trajectory. This is the sweet spot we're looking for. We can't control the muscle memory of whoever is shooting at you, but we can try and anticipate his prediction to dodge his shot. And you see, while changing direction is a key tool to achieve this task, it is not the principle behind it. See, I know this target will change directions once it hits the wall, therefore the change doesn't prevent me from hitting it because it doesn't throw off my prediction. In-game, this translates into using all your experience with firefights, knowledge of the game, and any information at your disposal to understand the chances of your opponent landing a kill shot on you before you land yours in any given situation. Based on that chance, you know what kind of a peek you should go for and when, if you should peek at all, if you should dip out into cover or commit to the fight either by standing still for the accuracy or moving around to be a harder target. You know how to avoid the bullets before they've been fired, and even if they never are. There's my opponent. As I see him, I know exactly how long it will take to get that meta M4 roughly aimed in my face, and it'll be fast. My masters guided me on the way of the gun, and I'm confident in their training, but I can never be 100% sure that I'm nailing my shots within that time window. Shit happens. That gun could tear me to shreds in milliseconds if I end up in its sights. So unless I'm praying that he whiffs, I want to be out of the way before he gets his shot off. Think. That's it! To be fast enough, I'm not even gonna have time to process if I hit the kill shot or not. I gotta start throwing his aim off and walking into cover about as soon as I start shooting. Let's do this. He never stood a chance. You get the point. By anticipating where your opponent is going to have his sights and how fast he can get them on you, then comparing that to how fast you can get your shot on him, you can determine how to move around. And in the perfectly possible scenario that you are unable to hit him with that good, your only ways to prevent death are either throwing off his prediction or becoming unavailable as a target. Shooting at you should demand precise muscle memory and the most big-brained guesswork. Alright, now check out this other case. I know the chances of me hitting this flick before my soul is freed from its carnal chains are pretty slim. But look, there's this big piece of thing right next to me. He can't shoot me if I'm behind that. Since I came prepared for this situation by jiggling enough to avoid being an easy one-tap, I can probably get there before that happens. So I do that. Now that I survived the shitty fight, I can try and get a better one. Oh yeah, and movement might sound like a defensive skill so far, but it's equally offensive. You're trying to find a balance where you give yourself a reasonable chance to hit your target, and make yourself hard to hit in case you're shot back. Alright, let me show you one more clip before I address the elephant in the room that you may have noticed. Take a gander at this engagement, and try to specifically pay attention to the movement. Don't worry about how I pushed, and why, where I positioned, etc. Ooh, did you catch that? Let's run it back and slow it down a little bit. I know this guy is on the second floor somewhere, and I go to the top of the stairs, I stop and shoot him. Turns out I'm dog shit garbage at the game, so I don't kill him in the first spray. Now here's the interesting part. Most people I see will just take this fight and keep going. Intuitively, you can make a case for standing your ground. I'm a small target. He's moving, so it's harder to hit. Supposedly I have a better chance, right? But it doesn't work that well in this game. My experience tells me that at this point I have about the same chance of waiting and or adjusting for the recoil and flicking the headshot onto him while he's just changed directions than he does of hitting my small stationary head with a spray while moving. So I'd rather move out of the way. Sure enough, he hits my right arm, which is precisely where my face, or at least my chest, would be before I started moving. Then immediately after, I noticed the tracer going precisely where my face eyes were a tiny second ago. It all sounds really simple, right? A plus B equals C.
-1, that's free, quick math.
But look at the fight in real time. It happens fast. I see him turn with that AK. My brain knows I'm probably about to die if the shot doesn't hit without me even thinking about it. My hands just do their thing on their own. Oh yeah, remember this clip? See how my initial Fortnite zoomer reaction was the flick, and only then I awkwardly turned around? Almost like when someone gives you a scare and your body does something weird before you can even process what happened. See, this whole thought process, all that understanding I mentioned before, nobody thinks that fast. For skilled players, it happens as a second nature. They've trained, dissected, and experienced these situations enough times that it becomes a subconscious process, fast enough to turn into a physical reaction. But chicken, how do I develop this reaction? Well, there are plenty of videos out there on how to improve specific skills, but the gist of it is mindful practice and repetition. You're obviously not going to absorb this information into your DNA by just watching this video, but trust me, it's a whole lot easier to know what you should be paying attention to than to develop this understanding on your own through thousands of hours of grinding. It makes your practice more fruitful and the experience you get more valuable. So now whenever you die or fail to get a kill, fight the frustration. Instead, dissect the situation with your newly acquired movement glasses to see what you could have done better, what your opponent did right, etc.
I don't have autism.
Watching skilled players while applying the same logic works just as well. It's a lot like learning a new language. With time you'll start getting the feel for it. Suddenly things get smoother, you don't have to think about it as much, and eventually it just becomes instinctive. But for now it's important that you slow it down and think about it
long and
And no, you don't need the reaction time of a 16-year-old. Your physical reaction time is not a big deal at all in this game. Since we're talking about improvement, remember when I said this? Try to specifically pay attention to the movement. Don't worry about how I pushed and why, where I positioned. And remember this guy from earlier? I had kind of a bad peek initially. I overexposed too much while aiming at nothing. You see, it doesn't matter how I got to this point or what I do afterwards. It's inevitable that you get yourself into scenarios like this where you're about to get shot and your only chance to save your life is to rely on your movement shenanigans. Half the point of mechanical skills is their potential to bail you out of your shitty decision making every now and then. But to improve, it is important to know how to separate the two so you can understand what needs focus. Just because I killed this guy doesn't mean my play was good. My movement was alright, but I should work on the bad awareness that made me overexposed like that. If the peak was good, the first few shots would have been easier to hit and missing wouldn't almost get me killed. An inexperienced player will often blame something superficial like bad aim for dying, but as you get a better understanding of the game, you'll notice there's always a lot more behind it. Okay, now back to movement. Here's a few more ways to apply these principles you learned today, starting with the most obvious. The 80 spam is widely known and used, since it is the most effective close-range fighting method while requiring barely any skill. Whenever you're in a straight-up face-to-face firefight, it's way better to look like this than just sitting still, since your accuracy is not very different in both cases. While it is a jack of all trades, by now you understand how a more calculated approach will give you that extra edge. But sadly, when in doubt, spamming works fine. The closer the range, the better. Another quick tip, Baltimore! Remember to throw your mouse a lot. Look around fast to be able to sprint and sharply changing directions. When throwing a shot off or wimping out into cover, it's a lot faster than just simply holding your movement keys. It also helps with smoothing out your pathfinding, making it more efficient, not getting caught in corners, etc.
That's right, we'll fuck your wife.
Even when you're not in a firefight, you should be abusing Tarkov's inertialess strafing. Of course, you're hard to spot when sitting still, especially if well camouflaged within bushes or a dark corner like a filthy rat. Our eyes evolved to pick up movement in the jungle, but it's always risky since you never know if someone has already seen you or has popped up from somewhere you can't see. You're just vibing and someone spots you before you're ready to fire on them.
You're a dead motherfucker. Go to hell.
Because in Tarkov,
You're but 6 ways from Sunday. Take a hike.
now if you're moving, worst case scenario, you'll still have a decent chance of getting into cover safely. Throw in that laggy zigzag thing while you're at it. Keep in mind that this also applies whenever you stop to shoot at something as well. Someone could always be watching, just waiting for the right moment. Does this mean a good player is moving 100% of the time? No! This is more about awareness and game-sensitive movement, actually. Experienced PMCs simply know where they're visible from and where people are likely to show up, and therefore can judge precisely when they are in danger of getting spotted first, to decide whether to camp or jiggle. And that's why you rarely see good streamers getting one-tapped out of nowhere compared to the average player. It's not luck, you're just bad.
Guaranteed.
And finally, clearing new territory is the most common situation in Tarkov, but most of the time you don't know what's behind that corner. How do you find out? How do you deal with it? I'm not gonna make this a 30-minute video, so I split the segment into a separate one. Maybe make it a series. Ooh, what's that? You're interested? Damn, if only there was a way to get notified when I release some of that spicy new content, some of that fresh good, some of that little something. Oh, that's right, you can report chat. No, don't do that, please, it was a joke. But yes, sub, hit bell, hit like, all that good stuff. Was this video nice and entertaining? Did you learn something? Is there anything I forgot to mention? Was it just hot, stinky garbage and I should commit a self-inflicted absence of living? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to share this with your friends, you know, like a passive-aggressive way to letting them know they suck, so hopefully they stop being such dead weights and getting you killed, or best leaving you hanging every time you play mine. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good time, my friend. Now, oh fuck, that was me, sorry. I misclicked going back to the game.